Welcome to my presentation entitled Learning from a Distance, a conceptual teaching framework that supports positive emotions and novelty during independent fashion design processes. An open creative mindset is vital for fashion designers to thrive in the fast-changing work environment today, where novelty in design is key, especially in terms of a significant shift in the industry towards niche fashion products sold online, where goods are often selected based on their originality and newness. It is therefore important from an educational perspective to cultivate creative thinking skills in students. In 2019, I developed and implemented a creativity framework as a teaching strategy to enhance students' creative flexibility, fluency, and flow. This framework is underpinned by Fredrickson's positive emotion theory to enhance awareness and open-mindedness during the design process. The findings of this study indicate that the applied strategy had notable positive effects in maintaining positive emotions in students and in the ability to deal creatively with problems during the design process of a project. In a physical space, group dynamics between students and with a lecturer could inspire collective creativity that has proven beneficial for triggering new interpretations and discoveries that an individual alone may not have been able to generate. However, the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 that resulted in online and later blended learning challenges the effectiveness of the existing structure within this new context that is unfamiliar to fashion design students. Observations documented in a reflective teaching journal during 2020 suggested that students were experiencing anxiety and often felt overwhelmed by the expectations of this new situation that required engaging with design activities distantly and with no or limited physical interaction. Fredrickson maintains that experiencing negative emotions such as anxiety can narrow a person's attentional focus and impede creativity. This implies that positive emotions, on the other hand, could enhance a person's creative thinking ability to create novelty. The purpose of this paper is therefore to propose a conceptual teaching framework that presents principles that can support students' positive emotions and novelty during design processes in a blended learning environment with a strong online component. In the next section, I present a review of relevant literature concerning the key concepts of the study. Following this, the research methods and materials informing the development of the proposed teaching framework, along with the research objectives, will be discussed. I will then present the findings and synthesis of information in a diagrammatical framework. The paper then concludes with some final thoughts. Creativity is a complex notion that can be considered from various perspectives. This paper views creativity as a thinking ability that enables individuals, such as fashion designers, to create novel ideas, insights, or artistic products. Nevertheless, Fredrickson points out that for creative thinking to result in novelty, experiencing positive emotions to ignite an open mind is imperative. The argument can therefore be made that creative thinking requires a conducive environment that promotes positive emotions. An ideal environment for the application of creative thinking skills in design processes can be linked to conditions that promote a person's positive emotions, exploration, and interaction and collaboration that spark collective creativity. Positive emotions can be defined as situational responses relating to interest, pleasure, contentment, and pride. In short, pleasure ignites an urge to play, interest sparks exploration and to take in new experiences and information, contentment to savor and integrate to derive new views and answers, and pride following achievements create a desire to share with others. A creative environment promoting a positive mindset is therefore important, an important dimension of creativity that can enhance a person's ability to create novel ideas and products. A conceptual approach was taken to conceptualize and construct the proposed framework, guided by a constructivist research paradigm to support how information is analyzed and interpreted. The research process to conduct the framework was operationalized in 2 research phases with 2 objectives. Objective 1, to explore Cronje's integrated blended learning matrix for decision-making considerations, published in 2021, to identify relevant aspects within this author's proposed for-learning context that can be linked to positive emotions and novelty. Objective 2, to compile a framework that can be applied to enhance students' positive emotions and novelty in a blended learning design environment. In the second phase, the research followed reasoned argumentation to synthesize A, identified relevant dimensions of Cronje's matrix with B, literature, including previously published papers by the researcher, and C, the researcher's interpretation of these can be applied to derive a logical framework for the purpose of this paper. In this process, my extensive experience in teaching creative design and involvement with scholarship of teaching and learning was central and contribute to the credibility and validity of the data and conclusions generated. To further enhance the trustworthiness of information presented, peer debriefing was implemented. To this end, a peer with a fashion design education background was specifically selected to validate and interrogate the theoretical ideas, reasoned arguments, and the proposed framework. I will now present the findings and discuss the synthesis between Cronje's blended learning matrix for decision-making and the creative design process of fashion design students to acquire novelty. Cronje defines blended learning as a teaching approach that includes the appropriate use of a mix of theories, methods, and technologies to optimize learning in a given context. The theory and matrix offered certainly provide valuable guidance for the compilation of the proposed teaching framework of this paper. Nevertheless, although Cronje points out that a positive attitude is a contributor to students' satisfaction and intrinsic motivation in blended learning, this paper does not provide guiding theory to support these emotions. Guided by Kurtz and Snowden's Sinefin framework, Cronje presents 4 areas of learning context in blended learning, namely known knowledge, complex knowledge, as well as the domains of knowable and chaos that should be combined and to optimize learning, irrespective of the instructional technology. Known knowledge represents best practices and standard operating procedures, and the blended model would focus here on modes of instruction or injection. In terms of a typical fashion design project involving the application of the design process, injection can be linked to the input provided by the lecturer to guide the process and inform students of project requirements, and then for students to apply the information. Some virtual techniques that are relevant to fashion design include a clear project brief, short live or pre-recorded lectures and video demonstrations, digital notes and books, regular lecturer interaction involving meaningful communication and feedback on design work to guide students' creative design process. Considering Fredrickson's positive emotion theory, the point is made that appropriate and meaningful input to fully understand project expectations could provide confidence that can lead to experiencing pleasure, which might spark a desire to act. For complex knowledge, abductive reasoning is applied as students learn how to make sense of complexities and making logical conclusions from their observations. Cronje proposes construction tasks, problem-based learning, and open-ended learning environments as suitable for complex knowledge. This paper links complex knowledge to design that consists of a course of actions aimed at solving design problems that are often open-minded, open-ended, and complex. In this context, the term construction is equated to the term creation and design. One can argue that for students to make sense of these complexities and attempt to create novel design and solutions, first require an interest to engage with the design situation. Positive emotion theory suggests that interest opens the mind and creates an urge to explore and figure things out. For fashion design in a contact environment, inspiration due to a change of physical environment, followed by an activity such as quick sketching to explore many ideas, could evoke interest. In a virtual environment, creation tools can be provided. The knowable domain requires analytical and reductionist thinking to understand something by breaking it down into smaller parts. This context relates to integration and focuses on systems thinking. Knowable knowledge is associated here with design as a procedure that requires synthesizing several ideas, elements, and processes into a cohesive whole to achieve a design goal. In a contact situation, peer discussion and sharing of ideas and processes are appropriate. In a virtual environment, chat groups and discussion forums for students to make contributions towards a larger design idea or issue, and discussions of each other's work could, according to Kim and Bong, create a beneficial collaborative ethos. The argument is made here that pleasure and pride that may be achieved through shared energy and collective creativity can induce a feeling of contentment. According to positive emotion theory, savoring feelings of contentment can support sense-making and integration of, in this case, several ideas, elements, and activities to achieve a design goal. The domain of chaos relates to experience. Traditionally, this may have been known as being thrown in the deep end, or what Cronje refers to as immersion. This typically relates to field trips, experiential learning, and apprenticeship, where teaching is notably absent and learning is incidental and serendipitous. This paper relates immersion to flow and creativity, which is a state of complete mental immersion when completing a challenging task. Operating independently in unfamiliar situations such as the above are likely to raise students' anxiety levels and can impede creative flow. Positive emotions relating to interest, pleasure, and joy may be viewed as opposites of anxiety and should be encouraged to counter anxiety. Blogging is a useful technological tool or keeping a design journal to document personal design processes. The pedagogical focus here is on assessment rather than instruction, and checklists can be given to guide students' design process. In conclusion, blended learning is not only about distance in an online sense, but also about the distance that students may experience when they are not part of the collective creativity in a studio as they are used to before the 2020 pandemic. The discussion of the synthesis of the proposed framework of the study suggests that it may be possible to link positive emotion theory in terms of interest, pleasure, pride, and contentment in a logical way to Cronje's matrix for the purpose of this paper. The value of the synthesis is that the application thereof could enhance creative design processes to achieve novelty in students' independent learning processes, as well as to optimally use online methods and technologies, such as online discussion platforms to create a beneficial collaborative ethos that could ignite collective creativity. The principles offered in the proposed framework may also provide opportunities to educators of other disciplines to pursue and adapt to their situations. Nevertheless, further investigation and implementation in a blended learning context is needed to assess its efficiency. I conclude that regardless of COVID-19, tertiary fashion design education will most likely continue to apply blended learning as a long-term teaching strategy, since the advantages for students are too significant to ignore, and therefore making the distance of independent creative design processes seem less distant for our students is imperative. Thank you.